Hello there! My name is Brent, and behind me is the abandoned mining town of Cerro Gordo. And back in the 1800s, this town used to be the largest producer of silver for the state of California. There was 4,000 residents here, and together they pulled $500 million worth of silver in these hills behind me. And for the past 2 years, which is very hard to believe, this place has been my home. There's been a lot of developments since my last video, so I can't wait to show you everything going on around the town and try to recap 24 months living in an abandoned ghost town. All right, so it's good to be back. I took some time off this channel to recenter, recharge, deal with some things behind the scenes that I'll get into later in this video. But before I get into anything, I just want to say thank you. Thank you all so much for the continued and ongoing support of this town. To know that there's this community of people around the world that care so much about Cerro Gordo gives me hope. It gives me confidence about the future of this town. And so before getting into anything, I just want to say thank you to every single one of you watching this video. I've had a lot of time recently to think back over some of my favorite moments. There's been some insane mine explorations, some cabin rebuilding, there's been dirt bike rides, there's been new animals that have come into my life. And so these are some of my favorite moments that I've thought about over the past few months. When I think back to the last 2 years, it's hard to not get flooded with emotions. It's easily been the most consuming 2 years of my life. I've never felt such a connection to any project. I've never found myself so wrapped up in one singular goal. I've never been exposed to so many new passions and skills and people. Never been forced to grow so much in such a short period of time. I came up here 2 years ago thinking I'd stay a week, a month maybe. I had a life, one I was really happy with, 1,500 miles away from here. But that call of adventure was strong, and slowly this town just took me under its spell, like it's been doing for the past 150 years. And I saw more in these hills than was currently there. I felt this obligation or obsession even to see that potential come to life. And I wonder if that's what Pablo Flores saw when he first came here in the 1860s and set this up as a mining camp, or the countless miners who spent their very last dollar on a sack of dynamite to give their claim that one last shot. There's this gravitational force to the town, and I'm fully stuck in its orbit. My time here has turned me into an entirely different person. The me from March of 2020 definitely would not be able to deal with everything that goes on here. Not physically, not mentally, not even practically when it comes to the different issues of living at 8,500 feet with no running water. I've had to learn specific things like heavy machinery, metallurgy, videography, dirt bike riding, and mine exploration, but also the life lessons that come along with it. The value of preparedness, that confidence of self-sufficiency, the power of living according to nature, and that humility that nature is always trying to teach us. The awe that is just inherent in the looming mountains or the vast deserts. I think I came out here looking for an adventure, and I definitely found it. Never in my life did I think I'd be going 700 feet down an abandoned mine shaft trying to find water, or digging trenches to build a hotel way up in the mountains, or that joy that comes with discovering an old bottle, or hiking 12 hours trying to find these abandoned towns from the past, or driving a 5-ton military truck down a steep mountain road, or even having alpacas. But I love it all. I love the skills, the passions, the people that have come along with the last 2 years. And I've made just so many good friends during that time. I came up here to get away from everything, but instead I found a community that just cares so deeply about the same things that I care about. I've seen the generosity of guys like Dave Sparks, Diesel Dave, and their crew, who just seem to make the impossible possible, but also the hundreds of volunteers that come up pretty much every weekend to try to help make this crazy dream possible. And together, they all taught me that pretty much anything is figure outable. I've experienced that beauty that being alone allows, but also how being alone allows you to appreciate that beauty of being with friends that much more. I've been able to share some of my favorite times up here with great people, like when 50 of us got together to metal detect. I love that day. I love having more and more people up here. I hope that continues. I really want to see this town fully come to life. And so as I slide into my third year up here at Cerro Gordo, I can only imagine what the future will hold. But I know that this magic here is very much alive and growing. And I just hope more and more people get to experience it. Now, to really get into this thing, I want to show one of the bigger things I've done over the last few months, and that's a road trip. It's a road trip very similar to the one that brought me out here originally. It was a road trip from my former home of Austin, Texas, to my current home of Cerro Gordo, California. Back in March of 2020, I was living in Austin full time. I had a business there. I had a whole life, and the pandemic hit, and I packed up my little Tacoma. I started driving west, went through Texas, went through the Grand Canyon, went through Vegas with nobody there, finally went through Death Valley National Park at night, and my little truck got stuck not more than a few hundred yards from here. And my life really changed forever. That was the beginning of the adventure. And earlier this month, I had to go back to Austin, Texas to take care of what was once my life, to get things out of storage, to close down a business, and to hopefully get a truck that could handle the snow in this winter. So with that, let's rewind back to Austin, Texas, and see a little bit about my life before Ghost Town living. This is what's left of my items here in Austin, Probably just pack up and get on the way. Even got this used truck, because this truck is 4-wheel drive and it can get to top of the mountain. Well, just a cool 22 hours away. All right, adios, Austin. Much like 2 years ago, I'm off to an adventure. I have a little bit better idea of what's in store, I think. But who knows what the next 2 years holds. And so with that, I decided to take a couple more days of my trip and do some ghost town research. If you didn't know, there is an amazing former mercury mine from the 1800s in far west Texas called Terlingua, which is right near the Mexican border. As somebody who wants to turn an abandoned ghost town back into a tourist destination, they've done that successfully there. So I decided I was gonna go there. That was gonna be stop number one. I didn't get the benefit of driving into Terlingua during the day. And so as I drove in, I didn't really know what I was getting into. Look at that. And I'm gonna turn on Terlingua Ghost Town Road. Should I turn our road into Cerro Gordo Ghost Town Road? So far my impressions are that it's like a full town. This is like a desert town, more so than an abandoned ghost town. I'm smiling because I got a sneak peek at my accommodations. Driver's seat, wonder if I can get this thing cranking again. Dave Sparks, where are you at? The beds, little desk, restroom, and finally the bedroom back there that lights off. All right, and morning Interlingua. That is hard to beat. How beautiful it is out here. I didn't see all that dramatic cliffs when I came in last night. That's beautiful, you know? Sun rising over the desert with these steep cliffs. These days, Terling was inhabited. You know, there's 100 or so people that call the place their home. You know, a lot of the different lots there are owned by different people. It's become this massive tourist destination, both because of the mining history, yes, but also its proximity to Big Bend National Park. All right, it is so windy out here, but this is definitely an old mine site, you can see. And the guy graded off, but oh, there's a ladder right there. Dang it. Look at this. This has got to be for refining the ore, wherever they're pulling out, because you can see kind of like a furnace over there with some piping that I haven't seen before. It's almost like ceramic piping, so like I said, a little bit later than Cerro Gordo would have been. And yeah, that must have been kind of an ore chute to come down. But look at these pipes. These pipes are like, yeah, like ceramic Nicholas Hersoff furnace. So that was a furnace. Got some leftover slag or whatever that might have been. I'm gonna probably not mess around with it too much. I play with lead every day. Playing with mercury seems like I'm just asking for trouble. All right, here's a little bit of history for you of the Chizos mine in Terlingua. So 1885, about 20 years after Cerro Gordo, they started finding cinnabar here. It says that there was the Rainbow Mine, the California, in Marfa. We might try to find that later on. And they did 76,000 pounds of refined mercury, which is a lot of mercury. 20, 30-year active life is a long time for a mine. You know, a lot of time these mining camps, they thought 5, 6 years they'd get in and they'd get out. It just felt cool to go to one of these towns and feel it alive and feel different people putting their different thumbprints on the town in different ways. You know, here at Cerro Gordo is a little bit different. It's all one piece. And what I tried to take away from Terlingua was like maybe having other people have different types of stores here. There's no reason that I necessarily have to run the restaurant per se. All sorts of things like that could be run by different people that might just have a totally different creative idea that they could bring to the table that might just add that variety that would exist in any town. All right, I'm about 5 minutes out from Tombstone. I think I've changed my mind. I think I really like arriving in the dark because you can kind of see what's going on with maybe the bars or any restaurants, but then in the morning, it's like a whole surprise. So, if you're like me, you may best know Tombstone from the 1993 movie with Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer. If you're more sophisticated, you may have already known Tombstone from being one of the largest and most infamous boom towns in the American West. You know, this is a town that had 10 or 14,000 people at its peak. You know, it had all of the infamous characters from the West stop through, from Doc Holliday to the Earp brothers to the Clantons and all of these other characters that are now just so enriched in lore. You know, it's the home of the gunfight at the OK Corral, which countless books and movies has been written about. But to me, the more interesting is that it's still so widely known 110 years after any of this stuff happened. You know, it's become this massive destination. And as somebody who loves silver mining towns and history and quotes the movie, at least once a week,
I'm your huckleberry.
It seemed that I needed to go check this place out. To see the town, to see how they took, you know, the seeds of a story and turned it into a massive business is something Cerro Gordo might learn from. Like if Cerro Gordo had a movie, then Belshaw could be as infamous as some of these guys, but not there yet. Maybe one day. All right, I've arrived at the miner's cabin that these days has an electronic clock. Okay, let's see. They have the push switches. That's how the electricity actually is at Cerro Gordo. Cool. They got some consolidated mines bonds on the wall. Oh, that's kind of cool. Different newspapers about Tombstone, I assume. Yep. I have to resist to go too touristy, up at Cerro Gordo. In small doses, this could be really cool with historic newspaper articles. Walking the streets of Dock Holiday must have walked at one point or the other. So far, it seems very touristy. So this is the Oriental Saloon where Wyatt Earp was a car dealer. And there's also a famous shootout here between Doc Holliday and others. As you can imagine, you would look through this window 100 and 150 years ago, and you'd see Wyatt Earp in there dealing some cards. That's pretty cool. Ooh, a little snow settles on Tombstone. There's the original Birdcage Theater. It says 1881. This is probably much quieter than this street ever was back in its heyday when they had wagons and carriages and people up all night. I doubt back then that there was ever a time, day or night, that some of the guys could have walked this street alone like I am right now. This is the original piano, and then over here the faro table that apparently Doc Holliday played and dealt, and the infamous fight between Doc Holliday and Johnny Ringo happened between here and here. All right, so out here in this beautiful country is the final resting place of Ed Schieffelin. And old Ed is the guy that started this whole Tombstone thing. And the story goes is that he came, from the gold rush, came over here, and in 1877 he was prospecting around, and he told one of his buddies that's in the army, he said, "Hey, I'm gonna find something." And the reply was, "Yeah, you'll find your tombstone." And sure enough, in 1877, right out in these beautiful hills you see, he found something. So he filed claims for both tombstone and graveyard, and that kind of kicked off the whole thing. The mine he found was kind of the economic source for all the wealth that became Tombstone. He saw a little bit of the success. I think he ended up selling his shares for about $500,000 at some point, which back then made him a really rich dude. I don't think he ever could have envisioned Val Kilmer and the cast making a movie that would just kind of transform this area into something that would last forever. You never know what one person can do, and you never know what's going to happen in the future. He probably saw just a mining camp, that he made his money from and got out of there. And if the movie never would have happened, I don't know that Tombstone would have been as big as it is, or the movies, I should say. And that's storytelling. Who knows? Maybe this YouTube channel is a part of that storytelling that makes Cerro Gordo live on for generations to come. So it's crazy. I'm back in Las Vegas, and I remember 2 years ago, I took a clip of that sign when all of the hotels were closed and there was 0 people on the street. Now, it's just slammed. Vegas is fully back. Because I remember MGM had a sign on it that said, all rooms closed. Now, there's 1,000 people in front of me, all going to Margaritaville. Shout out Jimmy Buffett.
Here it is, Cerro Gordo Road. You might recognize right around this area. This is pretty much where I was when the snow started hitting. I had to decide whether to keep going or turn back or stop. This is pretty much when the adventure started, almost 2 years ago to the date. There's the Welcome to Cerro Gordo sign, and I'm back. And now, let's get into everything that's been going on around here for the last few months. Full moon's looking beautiful. All right, so back here at Cerro Gordo, of course, mine explorations have continued over the last few months. You know, I think of my favorite hobbies I've picked up over the last 2 years. Mine exploration is at the very top of that list. And when I think of my favorite mines to explore, the Union Mine is at the top of that list. The Union Mine is the reason that, you know, they pulled $500 million of minerals out of this mountain. It is the thing that built Cerro Gordo. And to me, this map has become like a puzzle piece. Anytime I go down there and I see a hole and I don't have the gear to go down it, or I don't explore a certain level for some reason, it sticks in my mind. You know, I wake up in some nights, I'm like, that 500 level hole, what was down there? All right, gearing up for another day down the hole. Today there is this hole at the 500 level. And if you remember back a few months, Tim and I were down there and I put some railroad track across and kind of scurried across. Today I want to go down that hole because it might open up to all sorts of other levels. So that's the goal. Got a good amount of rope, helmet, harness, all sorts of things. So gonna go down there, check it out, you know. One of my goals is always to just continue checking off parts of the Union Mine I haven't been into yet. And if I know of a hole or an area that I haven't been to, it kind of haunts me until I actually go down there and check it out. So today, hopefully I'll be checking off one more area. Take care of the cats. All right, Tim, what do you think about today's adventure?
This will be a fun one. I'm looking forward to going back to 550 and look at that hole.
Yep.
See what's in there.
Gotta check everything off the list, you know. It's the next thing to check off.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll find some dynamite.
Oh, I love dynamite.
We've arrived back, 550. What a great place. To the pit. I'm hoping this pit goes down and there's a whole series of different levels down that way. Ah yes, here we are. Once scurried across that, now we're gonna go down. There's a sub-level right here. I'm gonna go all the way down first, I think. All right, that's up. Some side level. That's down. This is me just kind of dangling. Whee! Whee. All right, so yeah, I'm at the bottom. It's all timbered up, and then there's a bunch of ladders, and I think it goes one direction. You want me to go peek and see if it's worth coming down? All right, let's see. Doesn't go that far, but there was that one sub level up above, so I'm gonna go back up. Come back up. Good audible. So went down there, went around, and came up there, and it seems like we can cross this off the list. Not too much down there. There might have been at some point. There's some caves over there, caves over there. But we did find this cool core sample box. So we're gonna try to carefully bring that up as it is intact. which will take a little bit of care, and that can be put in the museum.
So as Tim and I were taking this ore sample box back to the hoist, we realized we had another 20 minutes before we told the guys running the hoist that we would be back. You know, and I'm never one to waste time down in a mine. If we have it, we're going to be exploring. And Tim remembered this crazy chute that was on the other side of the mine that last time we didn't get to look at.
Oh man, and this one, there's rungs that are turned sideways. Hey!
You want to take the rope up with you?
Oh, it gets incredibly steep.
Yeah. Does it look like it terminates up there or changes direction?
I mean, well, it really needs like a hook. You know? It's a slippery, wet rock. If I start moving, what's below me? Not terrible.
No, it's not the end of the world.
I might ditch a backpack and try. So to explain, I'm gonna try to go up this ore chute, because obviously the ore chute must do it at another level, but it's very, very steep and it's wet wood. You see these holes in the wood?
Yeah.
Hey! And then I should be able to push my body weight out, you know? Or my legs out. Oh no.
Stuck?
My headlamp.
No.
Is
You want to hook the cable on something?
I'll use my other one. Oh, come on, man.
The only problem I have is if it gets steeper.
Does it? What I need to do is probably like tie a rope up top, right?
Yeah.
Can you tie it to my shoe? Or put it underneath my toe? There we go.
And if it's cool when you get up there, I want to come up.
Of course. I just don't know if it'll have the weight to get down to you, you know?
Yeah.
It might though, it's going pretty good. Heads up. No.
Like in town?
No. I'm so close, but all of the rungs are broken now. There's a whole level right there.
Oh, there is?
So fucking close. Shit. But there's no more holes in the wood to the side.
Okay. And you just wedge yourself like you're going in a crack?
Yeah.
Hopefully there's something tight you up.
Yeah. Let's hope.
So close. It is the craziest ever. Woo!
All right. Oof. That was by far the craziest thing I've ever done. You can see how narrow it is. It's almost straight vertical. Cut myself everywhere, just bleeding all over the place. And look right at the very top. Tell me these are Levi's. Looking for a button. Is that button there? Holy shit. That's an old pipe. That's an old tobacco pipe. Holy shit. You see that? Some guy was up here. He left his pipe in his pants. That is so freaking cool. That's going in my pocket right now. Look at this, inside this guy. I'm going further into his, where the pipe was. And if you look, metal comb. And another metal comb. What does it say on that? It says unbreakable, and it's broken in half. Time will break all. That's funny. You can tell this is definitely denim. You can see the seam there, the blue. So we're gonna try to see this back up top side if we can figure out what it is. Oh, it's like a slide. Like the most scary slide ever.
Oh, that's a big one.
We still got to get down there and back out. Yep. Dude, you're so muddy. I know. Hey, look. Dynamite box. Hercules. So, speaking of things to check off the list, if you don't get too close to this, but down there is just a giant pit to who knows what. To other levels, to other things, but all this loose stuff on the side makes it very dangerous. So the exploration of the Union Mine never ends. Just when you think you've done it all. All right, and just like that, pretty successful little exploration. Went down, checked some more things off the list, added some more things to the list, and we are going back to the museum with some core samples and potentially some Levi's. You know, no matter how many times I've been in the Union Mine, you know, I've been going in there quite often for 2 years. It seems like every time I'm down there, even if I've been to that level 3 or 4 times, there's always the next hole that I'll find that needs some work to go down. And as I'm getting more and more comfortable with rope, I'm more open to going down some of those holes. Maybe one day I'll be able to map the entirety of that mine, but I think I'm a long ways off of that. And so maybe check in with me after another 2 years. But the mine explorations continue this month, and they're pretty successful. All right, now I know something that most of you are probably curious on is the American Hotel. Now, it's been a while since I've given an update on this. It's because I'm waiting on a permit needed to proceed. I'm waiting to get the sprinkler system all designed so that we can go up with it for about 2 months now. And so what we're gonna need is a really large water tank with a pump, and then the sprinkler system to make sure this place is safe. And obviously all of that has to be engineered. And so it's taken a while. I don't love seeing progress being on pause, but that's the reality of it. You know, we gotta make sure this thing's done right. And so for that, I wait for a permit. And once that's approved, hopefully we can keep rocking and rolling again. Also, it was a very good month for the animals up here at Cerro Gordo. We expanded the goat and alpaca pen to make it almost double its size. You know, I always thought it'd be great to have free roaming goats and alpacas, but with all the traffic and visitors that we get these days, I'm just not fully comfortable with that yet. Maybe I'll train them to come to a bell or something like that. The alpacas love it, you know. I see them in the new part of the pen almost every day. It's more hilly, so I wonder if they enjoy being up on these perches a little bit more. All right, so we're putting in the final fence here, almost done, but there's a lot of brush down there for the alpacas. But luckily we got some brush eating machines. Is Elon? Tusk, what's up, Elon? You wanna go to your new pen?
Oh yeah, he's ready.
Go free, Elon. Go check out your new domain. There you go. Yeah. We got Elon down there doing a great cleanup job. He'll take care of all this. Then we'll want those old alpacas out here.
Do it!
Chowing down. You're doing great work. Love your work, Tofu. Also, we were preparing for some new arrivals. If you've watched this channel for a while, you know that almost every morning I eat eggs. And so a very common request was, hey, Brent, you need to get some chickens. In preparation of that, you need a chicken coop. And luckily, a volunteer by the name of Rick Snyder, who comes up here all the time. And so this month he created, I want to say, one of the most amazing chicken coops I've ever seen. You know, I've only seen a few in my life, but this one is almost bomb-proof. All right, what we got?
What we got is a hand-built chicken coop for 6 chickens.
All right.
So they got little cubbies here that we're going to insulate around the outside.
Yep.
And in the top here. And they have a little ramp. They have a little ramp to get up to their house. A little chicken porch to look at the view.
Yep.
And other than that, it's going to last forever.
Heck yeah. Thank you so much for making this happen.
You know what? I really enjoyed this. This is doing a structure like this.
Yeah.
This is going to be here for many years.
Oh yeah.
Being able to contribute to do something like this up here is just awesome.
Yeah. They've
You know?
come up in a cup.
If I had to pay to come do this, I would, but I don't.
No.
Yeah.
We love having you. Door's always open. You know, I'm ready for these chickens to come, start laying eggs, getting fresh eggs in the morning. But I'm gonna wait to get the chicks just because of how cold it is. You know, it's very, very cold out right now, and I don't want to risk them having any health issues. If you have any tips as far as chickens go, please do leave the comments below. The cats are also all doing very well. A few of the kittens went in for their checkup shots. Everyone's healthy, everyone's good. They're surviving the cold really well. I have them set up with a little heat blanket and this heating lamp, and they all just kind of curl up at night together. It's very cute. Gordo's starting to live up to his name. You know, he's becoming a real big boy cat, which is hard to believe when I think about him being in the size of my hand, but cats are doing good. I think one of my favorite things over the last few weeks has just been having a number of good old friends come up. You know, the more time I spend up here, the more I've come to value just some type of normalcy. You know, there was a year and a half where I never really saw any of my old friends. You know, I know a lot of us did because of the pandemic, but being up here was even more isolated. And I'm the type that I just get so wrapped up in things, you know, whether it's this video or whatever project we're doing, that everything else just fades away, you know, and before you know it, you're just lost on this path with nobody to keep you in check, you know, not in a way that an old friend can. You know, I think it's really important to have those close friends and interact with them a lot. You know, they can kind of see where you're going and know where you came from and be like, hey, you know, is this what you want to be doing? And I think if I had that person here, I would have been a little bit more, I don't know, rounded out, balanced. You know, they also give you a reason just to reappreciate everything. Watching my friend see the sunrise, see the sunset, and get so excited, you know, taking tons of videos or touring them around and seeing their excitement about this beautiful place just kind of re-energized me. I remember my friend Buddy came to town and I took him on his first mine exploration ever.
So I'm gonna take Buddy on one of my favorite hikes here at Cerro Gordo. This is a hike that was purposely obscured in the past. So you may remember many months ago, I created a little structure over here, a little lean-to. Haven't been back in the winter ever, so I'm gonna go check in on the status of that.
It's much bigger than I thought it was going to be.
Oh no!
Was all of this?
No! My cabin.
It's a little windy.
Let's investigate the damage. Should I leave the jar of nails here? Ah, crap. My wall here. You can see part of the roof, but oh, folks, we got a project for an upcoming video. See those crystals? Dang. Whoa, wow. Hasn't been touched in a long time.
You know, and as we went back in the mine, we finally found this newspaper. You know, I love finding newspapers because it's always like a scavenger hunt, trying to figure out how old the newspaper was.
If you had to guess a date on this one, what would you guess?
1917.
All right. So June 2nd. You see that?
Ooh.
And I cut it off right where we needed it.
Chaboom! Was always a Monday.
Monday. So it's Monday, June 2nd.
Senator Harding of Ohio.
All right. Senator Harding of Ohio. That's a clue.
That's a clue. Is it Senator Harding that then becomes President Harding?
Oh. What do you think? What's your guess? What was your guess originally?
1917.
1919.
Ooh!
And one of the most exciting updates this month, at least if you ask me, is Scotty, who you have seen in a lot of the videos exploring the mines with me and doing other things, has come on to Cerro Gordo full time. That is a very big deal for the town. It's gonna mean a lot more progress, I think. His main role is kind of coordinating all the volunteers that come and go, which is gonna be just a huge relief. So that's exciting news. If you're interested in volunteering at Cerro Gordo, Scotty is the man to talk to. He is going to be the one that'll coordinate everything for you. And I'm really excited. You know, it just feels like weight off my shoulders. And my big goal in 2022 is kind of build a proper team around this town now, so that way we can have that sustainability to see this thing through. So if you need anything, I'll put some links below. But Scotty's here now, and this month was his birthday. And so to try to take care of the team a little bit, we had a little birthday dinner, and we decided to surprise Scotty with something he's been looking for a long time.
He should be back later today from Las Vegas. He was just taking a little vacation. But this is the bike.
This is exactly what he needs right here. He needs something that gets the Lone Pine and back, or just do errands around the area.
Yeah.
This is absolutely perfect.
Is this everywhere? What?
That's your birthday present, Scotty.
No way, actually? No, you're kidding me. What? Are you serious? What?
All right, guys, so what do you think?
Amazing. Amazing. I can't believe it. That's crazy. You guys did good.
Going down to the dunes, gonna have some fun today.
Yes, this is Dustin. He helps out a lot here at Cerro Gordo.
one of Tim's friends as well. Tim's not here today, but myself, Dustin, and Scotty over there, we can go do a little rip ride and do some jumps. It's gonna be fun. Yes, sir. And finally, there has been a number of exciting changes up here at Old Fat Hill. You know, this town and my life have changed so much over the past 2 years that it took some real time to just stop, reflect, and just plan for a sustainable future. You know, one that sets Cerro Gordo up not just for weeks or months, but years or decades even. You know, and that type of planning takes time. And that's what I've been working on over the past few months. You know, when I think back to 4 years ago when I first saw Cerro Gordo for sale, it just seemed like this dream, you know, this adventure waiting to happen. And I didn't have nearly the money to buy it, so I found a partner, we both found some friends to invest, we took out a big loan, and we kind of scraped together the money to buy this place. And since then, our lives have gone in all sorts of directions. You know, my partner has gotten married, had kids, bought a couple houses. You know, I moved up here full time and putting pretty much everything into this place. And over the past little bit, we decided to part ways, you know, and I think it was stressful for both ends, but considering that most partnerships up here ended in gunfight, I would say we did pretty good. And at the end of the day, I am just grateful that I was ever able to get into this place to begin with. And so with that, it leaves it to me to plan for a sustainable future, both for this town and for this channel. You know, when I think back to when this started, it all seemed like, you know, a video or two went up and then immediately there was volunteers here to help with every project. There was people to manage the volunteers. There was collaborations to do. There was a release schedule, which was all new to me. On top of a day job I was trying to maintain to pay for it all. And I think all of that in combination with no running water and all the difficulties of living here just really wore me thin towards the end of last year. You know, it took some good friends to come from back home and be like, hey man, you need to take some time off the mountain. You know, none of these guys from Belshaw to Beaudry to Remy Nadeau, none of them were up here 24/7. You know, they all had a home elsewhere, a place to kind of get some perspective on everything going on around here. So I relented, you know, I finally went back home for a little bit and pretty much immediately could just feel the stress drain from me. You know, I could get that perspective on all of the good things that happened around here, all of the mistakes that happened around here, all of the highs, all of the lows, and use that all to kind of plan for the future. You know, even when I think about this channel, it went from 0 to 500,000 to 1 million to more, seemingly overnight. You know, and along with that, it's so easy to just get lost in the hype of it all. You know, I would have all these collaborations with people that would tell me so much about the algorithm and the perfect titles to get people to come to your videos, the perfect thumbnails, and all of these things that don't really matter, you know, that took me further and further away from the reason I started making these videos to begin with. You know, I started this channel to capture the beauty of this town that I love and just document an interesting period of my life. You know, and with that perspective from away, I saw my relationship with this channel and how things needed to change a little bit. And so moving into 2022, that means there's a number of changes coming up here at Cerro Gordo. First, Scotty is on full time. You know, Scotty is your person if you'd like to volunteer up at Cerro Gordo. He is the one to contact. I'll put his information below. Number two, I'm bringing on a full-time general contractor. You know, somebody that can kind of keep all these balls up in the air and push all these projects forward. I think that's going to be really amazing to kind of like take more of the weight off my shoulders. Three, is just taking time. You know, these videos that I like to make take time. You know, I love the process of setting up beautiful shots of, even right now I'm looking at a bush fluttering a certain way in the wind and wishing that I had the time to capture that I might use for a 1-second clip in a future video. And so I'm gonna continue taking time on the videos. I'll prioritize quality over quantity every day of the week. And I'm gonna get help if I need it. And so I think all of those things are part of this planning process for the future. You know, how does this town last for decades to come? And it's with help. You know, I think that is the big thing that I've come to over the last few months. And as I've started putting together the team and kind of taking care of some of the behind the scenes things, I just get more excited than ever. You know, it just feels more real. You know, you're watching real time a crazy dream become a real business, you know, and so it's difficult. There's highs, there's lows, there's lumps that you're gonna take along the way. And at the end, I hope that this town lives and breathes again. You know, that is the ultimate goal. And it's a goal that all of you guys are helping with. You know, just knowing that there's this community of people out there that care so much about this town gives me comfort, you know, it gives me hope for the future. And so I once again just want to say thank you. You know, thank you all for supporting this town for the last 2 years. Thank you for supporting me as I navigate a totally different life than I could have ever imagined. You know, never in a million years would I think that I would be living in a former mining town for 2 years. Never in my wildest dreams would I think that I would be, you know, talking to myself yet to a million people at the same time. All of these things are very new, and it's a learning curve, and I think you're getting to see that in real time. But all that to say, thank you. You know, these 2 years have been 2 of the craziest and most beautiful years of my life, in no small part to this channel and every one of you out there. Until next time, I hope you all have an amazing time. I hope you all enjoy some history, find some adventures, and all that good stuff. But on that, thank you, truly, and I will see all of you guys next time.